Hi everyone, today we are making the best dessert cake ever. It's chocolate cake with chocolate mousse and meringue on top. You can't go wrong with that. Now before we begin, we need to get organised. So we need to turn on the oven and we also need to have on a clean apron, hair up, wash hands and have some clean tea towels. So let's get organised. So here we are, ready to go. The next thing we need is our ingredients and our equipment. So I'll get them out now too. So the first thing you need to do is to line your cake tin. Now you need a 20 centimetre cake tin and you're going to need it, one for the cake, but you also need to draw out 20 centimetres on a piece of baking paper for the meringue for a little bit later. So I'm going to do both of those now. So first of all, measure the size of the paper that you need and place the cake tin on top and draw around for the base. And then you need to do the same for the meringue. And this time with the meringue though, place it face down so that you can see the outline but not, the texture won't actually bleed onto the meringue itself a bit later. Okay, then of course, just using scissors, cut around for the base. Then with some spray oil over the sink or a bin is best. And then place that insert in there. Now you could also do the sides. I don't think I'll worry about that today, but you can do the sides as extra protection against it sticking if you're worried about it sticking. We're going to make the chocolate cake part first because that needs to cook and cool down before we can assemble it later. So the first part of the chocolate cake is you actually need a saucepan and you need 65 grams of butter, which I have just weighed out, and that can go straight in. You need 1/4 cup of cocoa powder, okay, which I've measured and scraped off with a flat edge knife. I'm just going to sift that into the saucepan just because cocoa powder can be a little bit lumpy. So I'll just remove those lumps. And just use your hand to squish those up through bits. You need 1/3 cup of caster sugar. So again, scrape that off and that can go straight into the saucepan as well. And 125 mils of water. And then pop it on a medium heat and stir that until the butter melts and it is all combined. And you need to bring it to the boil as well. While this is continuing to heat and melt, I'm now going to measure out my other ingredients that I need. I need 1/4 teaspoon of high carb soda. So I'm just going to pop that into that little bowl. And I need 2/3 cup of self-raising flour. And I'm going to put that directly into a sifter. That's 1/3. Just again, make sure you check your measuring accurately. 2/3. And also you need 1 egg, lightly beaten. Just with a fork, just swish that up. Don't forget to keep an eye on this mixture and keep stirring it as well. You can see my mixture is boiling, so I'm going to take that off the heat now. And I'm going to pour that into a medium bowl, and that needs to cool down for 10 minutes. So good idea, set your timer, and while that's cooling down, do a little clean up, put ingredients away that you don't need anymore, and just start getting ready for the next. Once it's in the bowl, and before it cools down too much, you can add the bicarb and just stir that through, and that will start to activate the bicarb. Also just stir the mixture every now and then, that'll help it cool down a little bit quicker as well. So my chocolate mixture is nice and cool now. It's had 10 minutes. I'm now going to just gradually sift and whisk the flour into the mixture. And then we add the egg. Use a scraper to get any mixture out that won't come out by itself. Now, if you add the egg while this is too hot, it will cook. So you need to keep it separate until it's cooled down. And combine that through. Don't overmix it, just do it until it's all nice and combined. Then transfer into your cake tin. Use a plastic scraper to get out as much as you can from the bowl. And that goes into the oven to cook for 20 minutes, I think. 25 minutes. Spread that out. It will be thin because remember we've got the 3 layers, so we don't need a big thick cake. We just want a nice thin one. Just gently push it to the edges and into the oven. Don't forget to set your timer. While the chocolate cake is in the oven, I'm now going to make the meringue. So for the meringue, you need 2 eggs, but you're only using the egg whites. And you also need half a cup of caster sugar, and you need 1/4 teaspoon of cream of tartar. First of all, you need to separate the eggs. So I always like to use 3 bowls, and it's very important to not get any yolk into your egg white. So be very, very careful. And there's a couple of different ways you can separate the eggs. You can do it this way. So from shell to shell, just be careful the edge of the shell does not pierce the yolk. And this is where the second bowl comes in handy. Do it again. It's a bit harder, this one. Oh, it's gone everywhere. Okay, so I'm not going to go from side to side because this yolk is broken and I will risk getting egg yolk into my white, which is why we do it into a separate bowl, not into there, because if they get wrecked, then you're not wrecking both eggs. Okay, and then tip that into there. So I'm going to add the 1/4 teaspoon of cream of tartar in now. And I have my beaters ready. I'm using the whisking beaters. I'm not sure if you can see that. Or you can also just use the traditional ones. Doesn't matter, whatever you have available. And start slow. And remember, you need to beat them until they are at stiff peak stage. And then we're going to add caster sugar. So you can still see it's quite runny. This is not at stiff peak stage yet. Keep going. So just stop the beaters every now and then and just check the viscosity of the egg white. You can still see it's quite runny. And when I lift the beaters out, they just fall down. So it needs a bit longer. There's still movement in the bowl, and they are now at soft peak stage, so they're nearly there, so just a little bit longer. Okay, you can see now when I turn the bowl upside down, there's very little movement in the bowl, and when I lift the beaters out, you can see that the peak stays its shape, so I can now start adding the caster sugar. Just a little bit at a time. This caster sugar will stabilise the mixture and will make it go nice and glossy and shiny. Make sure each time you add the caster sugar that you beat it really well so that the sugar is dissolved and it continues to aerate and it will be a beautiful, nice, smooth meringue. I've just added the last bit of sugar in there and I'm now going to beat it for a good 2 minutes before I finish up to make sure all the sugar is completely dissolved. Okay, my meringue is ready, it's shiny, it's glossy and it looks amazing and it's ready to go. Now while I was doing that, my cake was ready, so I've taken that out of the oven and that is also cooling. So to take this out of the cake tin, just run the knife around the outside, especially because we didn't line the outside of the tin. And then to turn it out, flip it, give it a little tap, and lift it off. Now if you want to flip it over, oh, it's a bit soft, you can just gently do it, or you can use another plate to flip it over. Now for the meringue, I'm just going to spray underneath there because it's curling up, but I can still see the line. Then we need to transfer the mixture. Now I have also turned the oven down to 160, so that hopefully by the time I get this into the oven will be a bit of a cooler temperature for the meringue. Then using a butter knife, spread it out so that it is just within that circle line that we drew earlier. Take care to try and make it as exact as you can because you want it to fit the top of the cake. Okay, once you're happy with the width of it and the shape, gently spread it over, but try not to flatten your meringue too much. And then to give it a bit of texture on top, just go up and down on top of the meringue with your butter knife to give you some little peaks. Okay, that then goes into the oven for 20 minutes. Now it's time to make the chocolate mousse. It's a very simple chocolate mousse. You just need chocolate and some cream. But first of all, you need to melt the chocolate. So I'm just using Cadbury's, but you can use any dark cooking chocolate that you have in the supermarket. Any brand is fine. Just break it into small pieces before we put it in the microwave. So I've done about 4 times 20 seconds. So you can see it's starting to soften a little bit. It definitely needs a lot more, but just make sure you stir it really well in between each 20 seconds. So this is now beautiful and glossy. I can't remember how many times I did it, probably 8 to 10 times all up in the microwave. And the last time I did it in 10-second lots. So you don't want it to get seized up, so be really careful. But that looks perfect. I'm going to set that aside to cool down, and I'm going to beat the cream, and you also need some vanilla essence. Okay, I have 200 ml of cream into the bowl, and 1 teaspoon of vanilla essence. And it'll only take about a minute, but you want to beat that cream to soft peak stage. I'm going to stop beating it there because I'm going to add the chocolate and continue beating it. If your chocolate's still too hot, it will melt the cream. So you've got to have a good even temperature, not too hot. I'm just going to a little bit for a start. And then I'm going to add the rest. Once it's combined and thick, you can stop beating. And perfect timing, my meringue has just come out of the oven. So once that cools down a little bit, I'll be able to assemble it all together. So I have transferred my cake onto a nice cake plate. And then with the meringue, I'm just going to dollop that on. Then using a palette knife, just gently spread that around to nearly the edge. And then now for the scary bit, to do the meringue. So first of all, make sure it comes up. Now you can use a knife. I think I'm just going to use my hands and just gently transfer it across and put it on like a lid. And clear off or wipe down any pieces that have come off. And there you have the very decadent choc mousse meringue cake. You'll absolutely love it. It's a real treat. Very high in calories though, so make sure you work it off with a walk or a run a little bit later. But enjoy it, it's totally worth it, and have a great day and happy cooking.